Welcome to Can Angels Fly. I'm Nancy, and today I'm just here to have a general discussion about where we are as general people in relationship to what is to be, what is possibly to be. Excuse me, I'll make it make sense as I move forward in this video. It's somewhat of a rambling rant, which I'm just sharing. It's things that I am picking up on, and I've been picking up on it for a long time. It's just how my brain works. So I'm gonna share. Now, in this video, I won't be talking about tarot readings at all. I will be talking about weather, various companies that have been setting a plan into motion for at least 30 years. And I'm going somewhere with it, if you just ride this wave with me. This is a video, I guess, to make us conscious, to keep us conscious about what's taking place. I don't really know how to categorize it. So first I'll begin with a dream that I had. I wrote down some notes, just a few, so I can hit on some points. I had a dream that I shared here on YouTube at some point in time. Oh, I know. I shared the dream on March 5th. In my video, it was called "What is that?" So I'm going to talk about that particular video. But before I talk about that video, I like to recap the dream I had. The dream I had occurred April 1st, the evening of Easter. So I went through the whole Easter day, and when I laid my head down to sleep that day, I had a dream. Very short, simple dream. I was in the house I was raised in, and it was my children, and we were in my mom's house that she bought. And like I said, I was raised in, but she didn't exist in the dream. It was just me and my kids in this house. As many of you may know, I live in Detroit, Michigan, and this is a blighted area, a city. In my dream, the neighborhood was like it was when I was a little girl. It's beautiful. But I'm just jumping the gun. Let me go back. So me and my children are in my mom's house. And my children are the age they are now. They're grown up. And they go out the door. And I go out the door behind them, and they are standing on the walkway, the walk path up to the house. And they're staring at something, but I can't see the way my mom's porch was made. It was a tall, like a half-size country porch, real high off the ground, surrounded by trees, so you couldn't see the surrounding environment unless you went off the porch. So I'm asking them, hey, what are y'all doing? What you doing down there? And nobody said anything. They just kept looking at what they were looking at. So I went down the stairs, which exposed the rest of the block and my children and what the people on my street, on my mom's street, were looking at. Mind you, it was the season was like early summer. Beautiful, clear blue skies, and the neighborhood was like it used to be. Now it's just blighted. The houses are all a mess or demolished or whatever the case may be. But I guess that doesn't matter, huh? I don't know. I think it has some significance. That's why when I think about that dream, as I talk about the dream, I bring it up. Anywho, what the dream was really about, what was everybody staring at? All of the neighbors and my children. They were staring at these huge snowflakes. These snowflakes had huge radiuses, but they were flat like discs, and none of them had hit the ground. None of them had landed. And so you could look up at them as they were falling slowly from the sky from the heavens and see the crystal formation. They each had their own formation, and they were absolutely beautiful, very beautiful, something like crystal. Like, wow, wow, they were gorgeous. As mentioned, they were like flat sheets. And I realized in the dream, although none of them had landed, I was like, wow, if one of those, just one of those snowflakes lands on this house, it will drape the whole house. One snowflake will drape this 2-story, 4-bedroom house as well as the yard. Oh, in my dream, I'm like, oh, it really did happen. What really did happen? The Ice Age really happened. I'm like, oh, the Ice Age really did happen. Then, oh, Noah's Ark, that story was real. It wasn't Noah's Ark about the story of Noah's Ark. It was about global flooding. And so I was like, oh, it really did happen. And so it was just that those snowflakes were so large that if they were to land, or when they began to land, they never did in my dream, but if they did land, they would cover up, one snowflake would cover up a home as well as the surrounding yard. And it was many of them falling from the sky. None of them had landed. And they also were coming down during a time of year, which they, even if it was going to snow, it wouldn't come down during that time of year. And so I was like, wow, Ice Age really did happen. Wow, Noah's Ark, the flooding associated with that story really did happen. And so I woke up that next morning. Of course, it was just an intriguing dream, and it has really stayed on my mind. Now, as mentioned, that was April 1st in the evening after Easter when I went to sleep. The next day, ever since, I'll say, today is the closing of April 18th. Excuse me, 2018. I'm going somewhere with this, y'all. If y'all just ride with me. It's just a lot of thoughts I have. So again, it's a rambling rant, and I am seeing where we are headed as a people. I'll make it make sense. Just ride with me. So the next day, this is reality now. My dream is ended. Like I said, it was very short, brief, but it was packed full of information. Anyway, the second, it was an okay day. Pretty cool. I think it got up to about 40 degrees. It was okay. But the next day, the third, it was dangerously cold. It had to be about 20 degrees. Now, in Detroit, Michigan, in April, that's when spring is breaking. You know, things are becoming lively again. Not this year. So it was extremely and dangerously cold. I say that it's dangerously cold because we wait so anxiously for spring to come that we're anxious to put our sweaters on and our hoodies and just go out and have to bundle up in our coats and stuff like that, winter coats and boots and stuff. But on that day, on the 3rd, it was so cold that, you could put your winter coat on and your boots and hat, scarf, and gloves and the whole shebang and still be cold. It was so cold. And it began to snow later that day. It did not accumulate, but it was enough snow to see it blowing and whipping in the wind. The next day, on the 4th, I'm talking about seriously, dangerously cold. I just checked the weather. It said that it got down to, 21 degrees or something like that. 21 degrees in the spring. But I'm willing to say it was a lot colder. That was the day, the 4th, that I put all my entire winter gear on in the wind. The wind was so fierce that it stole my breath. And it was just as cold as the winter months when the temperature is at 0. It was that kind of day. And I walked to the store and I was like, something's not right with this. Now, as I talk about all this stuff, keep in mind the dream that I had Easter evening when I laid down to go to sleep. The strange weather phenomena. Um, and I'm forecasting or not forecasting, talking about the previous weather. I'm not talking about previous weather just to talk about it. I'm talking about it being extreme cases of cold, extreme cases of snow, and extreme cases of rain. Now, the other video that I made, or the video that I made in which I shared that dream I just talked about, that video I made on the 5th of April. And it was called, was that? And what I talked about was how all of a sudden I just started seeing waves in the space, waves upon waves, and they were very condensed and intense, and I could feel them, I could see them. It was started to give me a headache. It wasn't like a regular old headache that comes on. It was being poured in from the waves. And as I reported it, people were very concerned, more or less with, hoping that I was okay and that it was my health. But I knew it wasn't my health, even though, now mind you, I guess I was like, y'all, and I did. I said I was ready to call it EMS or something because something wasn't right. But I also knew what I was seeing, and I saw these intense waves. So I began to kind of try to research a little bit about EMPs, solar flares, magnetic storms, geostorms, coronal mass injections, and different things like that. And my research really didn't reveal much of anything. I'm going to go back into it because I'm saying or thinking that one or more of those different types of solar or what do you call it, space storms can infiltrate into our environment and cause effects. Okay, but that wave that night that I reported on April 5th has come and gone. I had that experience mildly just about, I think it was 2 days ago. That was about the 16th, but it was nothing like that evening. And I bring that experience up for a reason. Just ride the wave with me. Now, just prior, what I'm getting to is just prior to those waves that I said I experienced, that I could feel pouring into my head, giving me a headache, and that I could see clearly in the air, especially in my peripheral vision, were just prior, fell just after all of that dangerously cold weather and the rain and the ice, the hail, and all that was happening 3 days prior. 3 days prior. Then it was the day of the wave that I experienced in the middle of the night when I made the video. After that wave, wow, the weather really went to strange. It really dropped down to 20 degrees and below for, let's see, a week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. 6 days. It got extremely cold, extremely windy. They say in Michigan, the only thing you got to do is just wait an hour, say go in the house and come back out, the weather changed. 100% true. The weather was extreme windy. But nothing like that one day I went out where it was taking my breath and it almost knocked me down. The wind was blowing so hard, it was concentrated, it was hard, and it had a lot of push to it, I'll say. Again, I'm just rambling, but I'm going somewhere with this, even though I'm rambling. I'm trying to share sets of information, clues to what is to come. What's to come. So the 7th day, after I had that wave experience, I woke up And I looked out, I tried to look out the window, but the windows were iced over, pure ice, where I could have took a razor and shaved the ice off the windows. Hey, even off the house. The house was covered in ice. Not only was the house and the windows covered in ice, I went outside and the grasses began to grow because it's spring. So the grass is kind of trying to perk up, and each blade of grass was covered in ice, as if it was individually frozen. My porch, I couldn't get off of. I have a concrete porch. Each stair, as well as the porch, was covered in ice, complete ice. The rails were covered in ice and also had icicles hanging off of them. The trees were just like the trees you'll see in the fall, autumn, Halloweenish look with no leaves, and it looks the spooky tree with just the stick part, the branch part, all covered in ice, as if everything was almost like it was flash frozen, and then thawed, and then flash frozen again, having the icicle effect. The next day, oh no, I missed. We had one good day. We had one spring day, and all extreme cold weather, between the 6th and the 11th, when it was extreme weather. I'm telling you, it didn't make any sense. It was definitely something wrong. On the 12th, we had one really, really nice day. I looked up the weather. They said that it hit 60 degrees. It wasn't no 60 degrees, but I would say it may have been about 45 degrees, 50 degrees at its highest that day. It was a reasonable spring day. I'll say that reasonably. But then the next day, as it was the day before, I went back to extreme cold weather. And then that morning, let me talk about that morning, after that really nice day. See, I'm not putting it in order. Let me go back. April 1st was Easter. At the close of the day, when I laid my head down, I had the dream about the snowflake. Then between the 2nd and the 4th, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, the weather was dangerously cold. One of those days, the weather was extremely dangerously cold. I know it had to be close to zero, even though they're not reporting it. I was out there in all my full winter drag. And the wind was fierce, to the point it was knocking me down, trying to knock me down, and I'm holding on to stuff to stay up. Then it was raining, and it was raining cats and dogs. Then on the 5th, that's when I had the experience with the wave that I say had to have been. I knew it at the time, either a magnetic part of something from waves, or pulses from a magnetic storm, or solar flares, or EMPs, or a coronal mass injection, or something like that. Then on the 6th, 7th, and 8th, it went extremely cold again. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, extremely cold again. But it did not get to what I'm saying. It seemed like it went zero one time. It didn't get that cold, but it did get down to 20 degrees or 21 degrees and stay there, with intense winds and stuff like that, but not like that one day when it seems like it was very close to zero, even though they didn't report it. I was out there in it. It still was cold, abnormally cold. Then on the 12th, all of a sudden it broke, coming from that 20 degrees, 21 degrees, up to 40, maybe 45 degrees. It was sunny. It was beautiful, blue skies. Okay, spring day. That's reasonable. The next day, in my neighborhood, in my community, I wake up, all the power's off. I'm like, why is all the power off? Like, wait a minute now, don't stop. So, I call my neighbor, her power out. So I go out and I'm kind of looking up and down the block to find out everybody on my blocks. Power is off. But why? It had to be shut off in the middle of the night. and wasn't brought back up to like 10 o'clock in the morning that morning. Um, but so it had to have been out for like 4 or 5 hours at least, uh, maybe even more. Based on the conversations we had and the time people went to bed. Um, but there was no real reason for the power to be out because remember the 12th was a really nice day. It was a reasonably spring day finally after all the cold, extreme cold and the wind and all that crap and the rain and stuff. Well, now it was nice. So to wake up the next morning and nobody powers on, nobody knows why, nobody's had any warning, it hasn't been any storm the day before, was nice. Power's gone. Again, magnetic storm, a solar flare, an EMP, or coronal mass ejection or something similar has to have occurred. And I say that because I go back to the 5th when I experienced and saw the waves, especially in my peripheral vision. I could see them as clear as if someone was standing or anything in front of me. I'll say that. If anyone was standing here or anything in front of me, I could see them, especially at my peripheral vision. So I'm still going somewhere with this. I'm still trying to go somewhere with this. So the next day, the 13th, I woke up and the power was out. It stayed out maybe 2 hours after I woke up. And it came back on as quickly. I can't say as quickly. It came on quickly. We didn't have to wait very long. No excuses were given. Then on the 14th, I'll say it was kind of a normal day again. About 40, 45 degrees, and it was raining. No problem. Reasonable spring day. Then on the 15th, go to sleep, wake up, and it is ice everywhere. It is ice everywhere. Like I said, I could have took a razor and cut the ice off the windows, the house. Every single blade of grass was flash frozen in ice. The tree branches and sticks were frozen in ice. I mean, everything had its own layer of ice. It was like, and I'm not just saying no little thin layer of ice. I'm talking about a significant layer of ice. So the next event, kind of makes sense. And the next event was, boom, all the power goes out. Interesting thing though, on my block, only half the street went out. The utility company said that there were certain power things that blew, or wires that caught on fire throughout the city of Detroit. It was reported that 200,000 people lost their utilities. That outage it began on the 15th. It went through the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, and then today, which is the 18th, the power was restored at 6 p.m. my time, Eastern Standard Time. So we had almost 4 complete days with no power and no heat in extreme weather. The conditions were extremely icy for the first day. The other, or the next 3 days, the ice had melted, but it's very cold, very windy, and then rainy. Yes, I'm going somewhere. And what I'm going to talk about, what I've been thinking about a lot about, is I've heard of this time period that's supposed to happen. And they categorize it as 3 days of darkness, 3 days of darkness. Is 3 days of darkness something that is naturally going to occur? Or is the 3 days of darkness man-made? Or both? Both. And why do I ask that or suggest that the 3 days of darkness that I've heard of is both man-made as well as naturally made? It is because when I say we, I'm talking about the intellectuals that have been. You study and watch everything and categorize it, log it, all kind of stuff. Understand various processes. And because they watch and see the processes and cycles, they can kind of guess, make a really good guess about what can occur. Plus, our intellectuals and different things, people like that that perform different works in this world, scientific works and experiments on a large scale, everything from NASA, those kind of things, our government, various branches of government, people that dig for natural resources, et cetera, et cetera. Every time they do something, it's a butterfly effect. And over time, even if the first time, what I'm trying to get, even if they do something the first time, they may not know the consequence that may follow. But by the time you get to the second or third time, you start to see what is developing, the butterfly effect that is developing due to one's actions. So again, they gather that information and they can project what the outcome will be or what a future experience will entail. Okay. That's the part that is man-made, and it's also nature following its course, natural course of action. That's what I mean by man-made and naturally made for the 3 days of darkness. But I started thinking, I was like, wow. It was so interesting that one day we wake up, it doesn't seem like there's any concrete evidence that led to the power outage of everybody. And then we wake up on the day that it does. Been a long time. That we wake up on a day that it makes sense with all the ice that there is a power outage, but only half the block is out. Not the whole block, the half block is out. And it's just how it was so patchy. The 200,000 people that were without their utilities was patchy. Almost seems like maybe, again, influenced by not only nature, but also by men. Okay. Now, what I want to talk about, it's not going to be long. I'm just logging my thoughts and sharing them. Feel free to share. I was looking over the course of my life, and I like being the age that I am, 48, because it gives me a point of reference. I can look back and see. So what I'm talking about, I'm still talking about and referring to the 3 days of darkness that I've heard of and chiming in and giving my 2 cents about it on this 3 days of darkness. Is it man-made or is it made naturally? Will it happen? And if so, why will it happen? Well, what I'm saying thus far is that mankind has his hands in the 3 days of darkness to come. Man has done or performed certain acts that has influenced nature to react a certain way, and they know it. Nature's going to do what nature is going to do. And it can absolutely result in 3 days of darkness. However, we know that humanity, men, women in power, always trying to tilt things in their favor. They always try to maintain the power associated with any experience. They try to stay ahead of the game. And they have been able to because they know the secrets to this physical realm. That has to do with all I was just talking about. I'm just rambling. So I want to look back and I want to share some of the things that I have held on to down through the years that points to this 3 day of darkness being known of, being set up, and it's being planned. And I'm going to try to make it make sense. I'm just coming out of darkness, y'all. And not cold, but I was dark. I had a gas stove, so that helped me out. So, I have a gas stove. Here, gotta get my mind back right. 3 days of darkness. Now the timeline, I just kind of wrote it here. I don't know if you can see. It's just really, I wrote it down on my chalkboard, but I ain't going down there right now. So actually, my little timeline goes from 1990 through 2020, and it's in 5-year increments. So it's 1990 to 1995, 1995 to 2000, 2000 to 2005, 2005 to 2010, 2015, 2020. And the first thing I wrote some notes about was about the television. I don't know how old you are, but you think about the old time television in the 1980s and stuff, and probably even the early 90s. TV used to, well, we know 1950s it was black and white. Then we finally get the color TV. Then TV, remember, used to go off at a certain time. It ended with the national anthem and the flag swinging and it static. That was the end of TV for the night. And then cable was introduced, and now you could buy TV and keep it on all day and all night. And you had all these programs available to you. But it wasn't mandatory. You still could have regular TV if you want to. And even at that time, when cable come in, TV was extended. It didn't go off as early anymore. But then I want to say, in 2000. I'm just roughing the time periods because I really can't recollect. And between 2000 and 2005, we got an announcement that the wavelength that TVs or TV programming was ran on would no longer be available. You had two options. Either you had to buy a converter box or you had to get you a cable company to provide you some services. Those that couldn't afford to or didn't want to go up under a cable company and get that bill, they got a converter box. If you were from a low income, you were eligible for one free cable converter box. After that, you go to the store, they were $60 and up. So between 2000 and 2005, that's what I'll say consumers had to do. Either you did the converter box, you got one free, or you had to purchase one. They started $60 and up, or you got a cable company, which means you had a bill. Now, attached to the cable company is also the internet. So I'm just hold on to that because it crosses the telephone. Now, you remember the telephones, a landline. Oh, the young folk don't know nothing about no landline where you plug it into the house. They don't know nothing about that. Well, the time came when cell phones were introduced. Well, they used to have a big old cell phone. We call them refrigerators back in the 80s and stuff. And then all of a sudden they really slimmed down around 2000-ish. They slimmed down and became more practical. It's lightweight, And what am I getting to when I talk about phones? Well, although the landline still exists, it is mandatory, especially in businesses like hospitals and daycares and, big businesses. Business landlines are required. This is important. But in private homes, many people relinquished their landlines and just have a cell phone. That's what's going on now. Payphones were totally outdated by 2008. They were done. You may be able to find one at places like courts, because you can't take cell phones into certain courts, stuff like that. They may have one payphone for you to use, but in general, you can't find a payphone anywhere else. So all you have is either your cell phone or you got a landline. But most people in their private homes just let go of the landline so that they only have one bill, the cell phone. Now, this is where I'm rambling. Just try to ride with me because I'm trying to go somewhere with this. So now we have to pay for TV. cable. And we have to pay for the cell phone. And for people that either really just watched their budget or just couldn't afford it, they just let the landline go. However, the landline is more dependable, and it is not on the same wavelength or ran by the same technology as a cell phone. And so just say a cell phone tower is destroyed, the cell phones attached to that tower or depending on that tower will not work. A landline will continue to work. That's why businesses and places like hospitals and daycares and stuff like that still have landlines. Landlines are highly important. I'm going somewhere. Now, talking about the TV, not the converter, but TV with a cable provider. A cable provider is also someone that you can get your internet service from. Another thing that happened with the cell phones is that cell phones now, at least in the last, I'll say 8 years or so, maybe longer, I'm not sure, also provide you with internet service. So we all can connect to get online. We all get online. It was interesting that when they, were outdating landlines as well as payphones. Then we had what they were calling the Obama phones, giving people with low income free phones. Everybody got a phone. So everybody got a tether, a tracking device in their hands or their pocket, freely carrying it. Rather than a tether, somebody then hooked to your arm or your wrist or leg or whatever, you carrying it willfully around. But I'm going somewhere with all of this. So now we have, if you can't pay, if you don't have enough, or if you're watching your budget, whatever the case is, you got to convert a box on your TV and you're carrying an Obama phone. You don't have a landline in your house. Okay. You may have one of those Obama phones. You may have some internet service because I think they've gotten a little more advanced now. And you are carrying a tether with you wherever you go. On the other end, if you have a little extra cash, then you may have a cable company that also provides you internet service. You may have a better quality phone that also offers you internet service. Some people, if you got a little extra cash, may still have a landline because either they may have an in-home business or they just understand the significance of a landline. Okay. But cell phones, not cell phones, pay phones, you ain't got to worry about no more. Don't even try to call nobody. So next thing I want to talk about is the utility company. And in my area, the utility company is currently called DTE. It was called Edison, and then it went from Edison to Michcon, and from Michcon to DTE. As this company changed names, it also changed like its policy. When it was Edison, way back in the day, around 1990 to 2000, every customer was issued 2 bills, one for the lights and one for the gas. Now, if you had any challenges, struggles, or you just needed to rob Peter to pay Paul, you could pay one bill, but not the other. See, I'll catch that up later. Or you could pay one bill in full and half the other one and catch up later. Or you could pay half on both and catch up later. Either way, you was able to juggle it and keep at least one of them on. But that was a reasonable practice. So most folks could keep both of them on. So that continued to go on until about 2000. But by about 1992, between 1992 and onward, I was going to say onward, but 1992 to 2000, it used to be people that come knock on people's doors. I'm going somewhere with this, y'all. All of it goes together. Knock on people's doors and have them sign up for programs that the programs are about raising funds for alternative energy sources, such as the wind vines and what was it? Wind vines and solar panels, those kind of things. And what it was, they charged you like 10 cent per unit, uh, 10 cent per unit, 10 cent on every unit that you used. Cost Every unit that you used cost 10 cent more. And it was supposed to be that basically you were a person that signed up was investing in the um, development of those alternative energy sources, such as the wind vines and the solar panels. Now, that went on for years and years and years and years. And last month, when I went to pay my bill, I was like, that's interesting that I signed up for that program. And for years, they took 10 cent or added 10 cent on every unit that I used over all them years. And the way it was supposed to be is once they got everything in place, I was supposed to be locked into that amount because they were projecting that the units would cost, so much more by now because we're talking about 20 years ago, 20 something years ago. So I would be locked into that amount that I was paying back then and eligible for the alternative energy energy sources. I've heard nothing from it. So as an individual consumer, it's very difficult to fight for your right. However, I said to myself the other day, I said I got to contact the Better Business Bureau and the FCC because that was faulty, and nobody ever contacted me. It's been I done had my same utilities in my name since I was I moved on my own. I was 19 or 20 or something like that. So all of those years, they've been collecting money. Well, they've been stopped collecting, but they did it for about almost 10 years, I know. And it might not have been a lot for just me, but you look at they were doing I at least know the city of Detroit, but I'm sure it was just further out than that, how much money they made with like 10 cent per unit more or whatever it was, And so I'm going somewhere with that. How they raised funds to create these alternative energy sources, but never made good on their promise. Okay, but I'm going somewhere with that. So in 2000, come about 2000, all of a sudden, that company that was called Edison was changed over to Mishcon. When it became Mishcon, their policy was to send everybody one bill. And those one bills combined the lights and the gas. One bill. So whatever the bill amount was, you had to pay it in full. If you did not pay it in full, both utilities went off. You could pay half the bill. But if you didn't pay all the bill, eventually you got a shut off and both utilities went off. So remember with the old system, you could rob Peter, pay Paul, you can keep them on. This one, if you don't pay it up, eventually, quick, fast, and hurry, you get shut off. Okay, so everybody keep on moving forward with the struggle and go ahead and pay it the best way they can. Keep it on. Never can catch a breath, a break, and you bet not need to redirect no funds nowhere because they want their money and they want it all. Okay, but I'm going somewhere with this. And then 2015, around 2015, this new company, DTE is the name of the company now. They went around to everybody in my city, which is Detroit, and they dug up everybody's yards in the street and they laid down these new utility connections, fiber optic cables, I don't know, and put in these remote boxes that hum all the time, and you have the vibration on the back of your neck. But I bring that up because we're still everybody is in the city, and anybody that receives services from DTE is still under that, both utilities under one bill, pay it all or get cut off. Now it's remote. They can just click you off at the office if you don't give them all their money when they want it. I know everybody say, pay your bills. I got that. I've been doing that. But see, just ride with me because I'm going somewhere with that. Going somewhere with this. Now, I'm just rambling. I'm going, after being in the dark for like four days, that was deep, you know. And remember, this video is about the 3 days of darkness I heard of. I can't remember where I heard of it from. But I think that the 3 days of darkness is planned. I do believe that mankind, certain people in humanity, have performed certain activities scientifically that is creating a butterfly effect within our environment that will, again, knock out. That's why I was talking about the EMPs and the solar flares and the geostorms, whatever one you want to call it. I don't know. But I do believe that, what I'm trying to say, the reason why I brought up my personal areas, television and cable and phone and utility, why I brought all that up is because all of these things are now Wi-Fi or wireless, or it's not like the old landline. It ain't like the old TV anymore. Those things had to be individually turned off. That was the good thing. Not only was it had it individually turned off, it gave people time to be able to, deal with any issues, get back, give them some time to, get things together. And it was like we were more on an individual, like, I know we were on larger grids, but more like on an individual grid. Everybody wasn't affected. But now, the televisions run by cable and cable only, or a doggone converter box, it don't make no difference, or the cell phones with the internet, and the utility companies with these remote boxes. When the weather gets wicked, whether the weather gets wicked because it is nature, or, wait a minute, Samantha, just a minute, the dog want to come in, or if it is brought on by some of these solar flares and different things that are happening because there are changes taking place in the cosmos, or in our environment, our atmosphere, are affecting these things that can be put out. Like in the last 4 days, all of our stuff was out. I couldn't use a cell phone except for the charge that I had on it. I could not use my computer except for the charge that I had on it. Once it was gone, it was gone. And I charged my phone up one time at the neighbors across the street. Remember, I was only half the block. But I wanted to challenge myself to see if I was ready for something like that. And it's the demand on an individual household that is an issue. That's a heavy, what I'm trying to say is that's a heavy demand. And what I'm also saying is that it is being planned. It is being planned. Everything has been set in place. That's why I talk about the transition that has happened with television, and then the transition that has happened with the phone service, and the transition that has happened with the utility companies. All of these things have separated the corporations or businesses and the people from the people. It is also, how can I say it? It's just the separation between the people, the consumers, and the companies. It's a separation between the consumers and the techs. And when we start talking about this happening on a large scale, now it's only 200,000 people within, basically the city or the Tri-County area. 200,000 people. That's a considerable amount. But if a real live EMP is coming, and what I experienced the other day when I experienced that wave, it's just a heads up, then are you ready? Because what I'm seeing is that it's been planned. Nature already has its course of action. Then mankind has been messing around with nature's process. And therefore, I think it says amplified or has um, rushed nature's process, and it's coming on, and they know that it's coming on. Um, all of these changes that I speak of with the utilities have decreased jobs for people. What I'm saying, the reason why I'm stumbling over everything, because everything is crossed, everything is intertwined, and because everything is intertwined, nobody can see it. And so maybe one day, I may pull a little yarns and threads loose and go into it in more detail. But what I'm trying to say is that there are people that it's a Georgia guidestones that says or suggests that humanity should be kept to under 500 million people. But if we are currently at 700 million people, then we are well above the suggested threshold for people. And so if it is a time for them to decrease the population, that's what Ebenezer Scrooge says, decrease the population. I'm rambling, I'm ranting. And then the best way to do it is to use nature, Then you don't have no blood on your hands, directly anyway. Nobody can show that a person or a corporation is guilty. And so only thing they have to do is set up the people to not be able to strive during this 3 days of darkness. Everything from the reduction in food, the prices of food going up, all of these things fit into the puzzle. Like I said, the primary, the not primary, necessities. You must be able to have communications outside of your area to call emergency or EMS, to make phone calls, to get just updated information, to know what is happening. Let me run a case scenario across. That wave that I experienced about 2 weeks ago, when was it? A week ago, comes through, but it comes through bigger. And it really affects the grid. And it knocks out the television because it's ran by cable, and it burns out the little cheap converter boxes that don't work. It burns that out. Then you're not in touch and able to find out what's taking place. Then and then the cell phones also are affected. They're blew out, and for those that aren't blew out, the power grids themselves are blown out or disrupted or burnt up or whatever. And so you ain't got no electricity to charge a phone up if it does survive, and the internet is knocked out. And so my point of saying all this is that you won't even know what's taking place throughout the country because you can't get outside of your space to find out or to get instructions or something like that. And we as people have not been taught how to independently survive or sustain ourselves. And then some people, like even myself, how far do I go to take care of myself when something happens? And I don't know the depth of it. You know what I'm saying? Because I can go to an extreme, but it might not cause for me to have to go to that depth. And then I'll been and did something wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, just depth, like starting to cut trees down or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Going to depth. Then they may say, oh, you should have cut them trees down. Well, I didn't know how long we were going to be without, heat. I wasn't going to sit around and wait, that kind of thing. So, and then the utility company, same thing, by all being remote and digital, a shortage will knock out power and heat and like a lot of people I knew had electric stoves. They couldn't even for 4 days. They did not have no food. They had food. They couldn't cook. Another thing, I'm gonna let y'all go because it's been an hour. I've been rambling. 3 days of darkness. 3 days of darkness in extreme circumstances. By the third day, you start seeing, because you ain't got no communications to the outside world. It's all he say, she say. you come to understand like, dang, this is kind of extreme. I got to do something. I got to move and make something happen. The electricity is out. Refrigerators are down. Refrigeration. Your food source is starting to spoil. You know, and then like I talked about the people in my immediate community, a lot of them had electrical stoves, so they couldn't even cook. 3 days of darkness. What will happen in 3 days? Well, in 3 days, oh, I don't know if y'all remember some years back. I want to say it's been about 12 years ago or so. The grids went off. Some core important grids, transistors blew up, and it blew the grid out, and we lost water pumps where it wasn't no water. Now I'm talking about some mass type of injection, hitting us, or a pulse or wave hitting us and knocking all that stuff out. And you ain't got no water, you ain't got no lights, you ain't got no gas, you ain't got no food, you ain't got no water, whatever the case is, you ain't got none of it. You can't flush your toilet. That time, during that time, about 12, 13 years ago, whatever it was, couldn't flush your toilet, none of that. And so I go back to how my utility company some years back, around 1990 and so, were collecting funds for these alternative energy sources, the wind vines and the solar panels. Who are these things servicing now? Because I haven't gotten any, haven't been offered any, haven't seen anything. So I got to look into it. That means I got to go to battle with a big corporation, just little old me, to get my piece of the pie that I invested in. You know, so, but who they didn't went through with it. They did it. They got them up and running. I drove somewhere with somebody. I'm not across country, but a distance, and I saw fields and fields of them. Who is it helping? And then I see the solar panels. Who is it helping? You know, all this rambling and saying, "Are you ready?" Because that dream that I had, going back to that dream, it was showing that these things, those real catastrophic weather anomalies, those events really did happen. The ice age, global flooding, it has happened in the past. We know it's happened in the past. We know that it's been at least nine extinction events. We know this. And we are so lost now, to the point we're not seeing all the evidence that's coming before us. I know I'm not the only one dreaming of the kind of dreams that I dream, but we're not paying attention. We are looking at the sun and identifying that's not the sun, or it's not in a healthy state. We are seeing the tsunamis and the pitfalls and all these kind of things, and we are not working together. This is the scary part. All this ranting and rambling, we're not working together. I believe that we are seriously headed towards some really catastrophic stuff, and we're not working together. We're fixated on foolishness. And another thing that became very blatantly obvious to me is that, like in my surroundings, didn't know. I mean, I had one neighbor offer for me to come to their alternative home they had. But I was like, no, I'm just going to meet the challenge. But thank you. I was happy to know that I had that. But for the most part, I didn't see nobody helping each other. I really didn't. And that's scary. And then I saw other people that came my way, and I'm looking like me, myself, it sounds contradictory, but I'm like, I kind of prepare for this stuff the best I can. And here comes a person that I know doesn't prepare for anything, you know? And so what am I saying is 3 days of darkness. Do you know the madness that would take place? Oh my God, the only thing that will save us is if it was to happen in the warmer months. But if it was to happen in colder months, this would be a hot mess. 3 days of darkness would end up being like a hell state on this earth. And so what am I saying about all this rambling? I was just pointing out some stuff that I had noticed, and how I saw that it related to 3 days of darkness. I don't remember the 3 days of darkness, whatever it consisted of in detail, but I can see the outage just being planned by the companies themselves. I ain't talking about nature. I'm talking about just the companies. We know nature run on a particular cycle, day and night. We know that. But if it was to happen in winter, we know the winter months are longer than in the winter months, the days are shorter and the nights are longer and colder. And so I just see how the utility companies, all of them, have aligned themselves to fall into that state of darkness intentionally. And again, I think it's to help reduce the population. Anyway, if you got anything to say, add to my rambling, just let me know. Oh, what's one other thing I want to talk about? The internet. The internet. It's wonderful, isn't it? I know. But when the internet since the internet has been introduced, I don't know how long it's been. I'm going to say 2005. Well, I know it's, nope. I know it's been way longer than that. Because the computers really came out in 1980s or something like that, probably 70s, with the people that really were in that field of industry. 1980s, people that had the money or some type of connects had them. But 1990s, they really started becoming into the homes. But since that time, pay attention. Since that time, certain things have been removed from schools and from our consciousness. One thing is bookstores have closed across the nation. Bookstores, libraries are closing, and then the way you have a library experience has changed. And so, what am I saying? If what I'm seeing comes into being, even if we plummet it into 3 days of darkness or more, because that's just, they only say 3 days because it's only take 3 days for everybody to go completely insane. The recovery of our grid will take much longer. Like I said, it was only 200,000 people in my location, and it took them 4 days before they got me. I don't know what percentage they had left. So, but if it became millions, that would increase it by 5 times. What I just went through is 20 days at least or more, so in 3 days, people would be going insane, depending on if in the winter, they will be completely insane, going crazy. Summer might be have a little more luck on our side. But why do I bring up the internet? Because it's replaced books. It's replaced libraries. It has replaced, we don't understand what it is to do a library search, index search and stuff like that, microfiche, where all the information to survival exists. The internet will be cut off. What am I saying? We won't be able to access it. So we have to learn now, while the internet is up, we need to learn how to be able to go to libraries and pull the information that we need to survive any catastrophic event that's probably going to be natural, but aided by man. For what? The purpose of reducing the population. I'm coming back and I'm going to unweave this. Just, logging my thoughts. Anyway, have a nice evening. Bye.